Hey everyone, welcome back to Set Sail with Grace Harbor. Well, we're taking a break today from Jeremiah, but we're looking into 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles to get some historical context which applies to what we've been reading about in Jeremiah. We'll examine the somber but crucial period of Israel's history, looking at the final chapters of the kingdom of Judah as it's recorded in 2 Kings 24 and 25, 2 Chronicles chapter 36. While these books cover similar ground, examining them together highlights the powerful and sobering theme, the inevitable consequence of unrepentant sin and the just judgment of God. Now, this may actually be where that expression, "you can run, but you cannot hide," originated from. Now, I know some of you who faithfully follow this channel may think this theme sounds very familiar. Well, that's because it is. The Bible has more to say about the nations of Judah and Israel's rebellion and their rejection of him than almost any other topic that we can think of. I think that's because he doesn't want us modern-day Christians to forget how serious he is about keeping his covenant. And that includes the new covenant that Jesus made with us in the New Testament. So let's get a quick recap on the historical context. We're nearing the end of Judah's existence as an independent kingdom. For centuries, prophets have warned of an impending doom if the people and their leaders don't turn from their idolatry, injustice, and disobedience to God's covenant. 2 Kings 24 opens with the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's initial incursion into Judah, culminating in the first wave of deportations, including a notable figure like Daniel. But even these warnings and these initial judgments didn't lead to widespread repentance. Instead, we see in both accounts, the kings who followed, particularly Jehoiakim and Jedediah, they continued in their wicked ways. 2 Chronicles 36 is particularly pointed in its assessment, stating, "They continually mocked God's messengers, despising his words, and scoffed at the prophets, until the wrath of the Lord was aroused against his people beyond remedy." Ouch. This brings us to the central theme of what we've been reading today. It's the inescapable nature of God's judgment when persistent sin is met with continued defiance. God is patient, as we see in the numerous warnings that he sent through his prophets. But his patience is not endless. Both in 2 Kings 25 and 2 Chronicles 36, it details the devastating final siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. Notice the parallels in the two accounts. The walls of Jerusalem, they're breached. The temple, the very symbol of God's presence among his people, well, it's plundered and it's burned to the ground. King Zedekiah attempts to flee, but he's captured. He's forced to witness the execution of his sons, and then blinded and taken to Babylon in captivity. The majority of the remaining population is either killed or exiled. 2 Chronicles 36 poignantly summarizes the reason for this catastrophe. The land enjoyed its Sabbath rest. All the time of its desolation it rested, until 70 years were complete, according to the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah. This makes us aware that the exile wasn't just a political defeat. It was God's judgment fulfilling his prophetic word to Judah and their repeated violations of his covenant, including the Sabbath years of the land. So what's he talking about here when he mentions the Sabbath year? Well, back in Leviticus 25, verse 4, God commanded the Israelites that every seventh year of the land should have rest. Now, any good farmer will tell you, you can't continually plant and harvest the same crops year after year and expect a good harvest. The soil becomes depleted and the crops suffer from lack of nutrients. You have to let it rest and recover. Let the weeds and other cover crops return nutrients back into the soil. Well, the people had ignored this for generations, and God is going to balance the books. 1 year of captivity for each Sabbath year that was ignored. Now, the narrative in both of these books don't shy away from the brutal reality of judgment. Sin brings forth consequences both on a personal and national level. While God is merciful and offers opportunities for repentance, and those who stubbornly reject his ways ultimately face repercussions of their choices. However, even in this dark period, there's a flicker of hope. The exile, while severe in judgment, it's also a period of refining and ultimately restoration. God's promises, even in judgment, hold true. We see the seeds of this future hope in the survival of the remnant and the eventual decree of Cyrus allowing the exiles to return. So what can we take away from these accounts in 2 Kings 24:25 and 2 Chronicles 36? Well, they're a warning against ignoring God's commands and rejecting his messengers. They underscore the seriousness of sin and the certainty of God's justice. But they also point towards God's ultimate plan of redemption, even after judgment. Thanks for being part of our recap today as we explored this important period of biblical history. What are your thoughts on the theme of judgment and redemption? Let me know in the comments below. So until next time, my friends, may the peace of God be with you.